We gotta talk about some of those huge misses and cards that we still need to see reprinted post Magnificent Monsters. Now make sure you guys smash the crap out of that Akashic Magician so you guys don't miss out or more Oz on that. So Alchemic Magician, this was a pretty big one that we're still missing. And I had to do a double take on this. Surely it's got to be in the Magistus deck later on in the year. But this thing is 3 level 4 spellcasters. This was something that the early Fairy Tale decks were wanting to play. But once during your end phase, detach and exceed material from this card, send a card from hand to the graveyard, choose a spell card from your deck, and set it to your spell and trap card zone. Why are we holding back on this? This card still has a pretty pricey price point attached to it. And the point is, Alchemic Magician is just one of those cards that you're just like, I want to play some bad ideas with this. Why is Konami holding me back from getting the opportunity to do this? And honestly, I agree with you. I don't know why we're being so hesitant on keeping this card out of rotation, because the reality of the situation is this is one of those cards that should have no problem sticking around. Dark Magician Girl, The Magician's Apprentice. You reprinted Shining Sarcophagus and you reprinted the Dark Magician out of this set. Why are we holding back on this card? This is one of the things I don't actually understand about Konami when it comes down to hindsight, when you're looking at these products, because there should be cards that should have no problem being in here. And the Magician's Apprentice, for whatever reason, we are just holding back so hard on. I'm actually hoping that Konami will eventually get the memo here and realize, oh, hey, you know, your player base actually wants Dark Magician Girl to be reprinted. I think the problem here is I think they're holding back the Magician Girl for some higher rarity slots, maybe for a battle set next year, because the card does have reprint equity, no matter how you want to spin it. The truth is, you know, it's still a Dark Magician Girl named card, and there will be some sort of impact to, you know, be had on this. So, okay. The lack of Dominus cards in this set. This really upset a lot of people because of the price point on the set. You know, you figured, you know, if you're going to be spending as much money on a set like this as it is, and cards are expected to have a $2 return of investment of value, a lot of people were just expecting there to be some sort of, you know, value in the set. Well, that ended up not being the case. We ended up seeing actually a finer dip in a lot of these potential reprints. It made a lot more people very, very sad. And not having Purge, Impulse, you know, Spark in here, I get it. I kind of feel that, you know, at this point in time, these cards, even though I think we've already seen multiple reprints over the last, like, year on these cards, I think people still need these cards to be reprinted further into the ground because they want them to be available, you know, and that's exactly the case, right? So hopefully we will see a nice little cleanup on this, which brings us to Gordian Slicer. So this is a pretty major miss on Konami's behalf, because the reality of the situation here is we're going into tunes. This is one of the few cards that actually can kind of stand up to Mind Scan, being able to peek into the hand and just do some of the BS. And people don't really want to deal with that problem right now. They would rather just go, oh, hey, please clean this issue up so that, you know, we can actually be able to play the game. And I agree with you, right? You know, the opponent looking at your hand, you know, blinking out several cards, especially in combination with Psyblocker, as we've now seen, has turned into an even bigger problem now. There's a lot of big issues that are just being caused with several of these cards at the moment. And as much as, you know, they need reprints, because Slicer does, if you're going to force us to play these cards, you need to give us the actual reprints so we can actually play them. Which is, where's our Malice P. March hair at this stage? We have reprinted so much of the Malice stuff. And the fact that, you know, there are no tins this year, and the fact that this set was basically marketed as an opportunity for you to get, you know, these cards that were, you know, not available or that would need to be in the tins. This is exactly kind of what we're talking about. Everything else in Malice at this stage has reached absolutely the bottom of the barrel on the reprints. Malice is like almost borderline budgeting, you know, its value for players, which is great. I love availability, but on the downside, you know, is just that. If we're missing an opportunity for these cards to, you know, be up front and center for, you know, reprint equity, Well, we kind of have some problems. So I don't know why we didn't get a March Hare reprint, but Konami still wants this deck to have a little bit of value, I guess. Which brings us to reprints. What's up with Marshmallow? This is another card that still is maintaining a little bit of a price point in comparison to its rest of its core, because everything else in Malice everything else in Yummy's been reprinted. They're reprinting the field spells in the World Championship pack this year. Why are we holding back on Marshmallow itself from getting out some of these core reprints? These are just the questions I have to be asking this community, because they just don't make sense to me as a whole. I am actually really, really hoping eventually that Yummy does eventually get the rest of its stuff printed into the ground. Because realistically, I mean, like, an Ultra Marshmallow wouldn't have hurt anybody. I think a lot of people would have been very happy to see this card actually kind of be up front and center and actually finally get one of the, cheaper reprints. Because at this stage, Malice and Yummy both should be decks that should be very, very cheap, because there's no reason for them to be, worth any more than that. And then we have Dimensional Prison. Why? We reprinted Iron Chain. We reprinted Waboku. We dipped in for some of the older format stuff. But why was Dimensional Prison not printed in this set again? Konami, you've proven to us that you're paying attention to Edison format. You've been tossing in little bits and pieces of reprints every once in a while. But it's just kind of turning around here and looking at the lack of Dimensional Prison reprints has been pretty crazy. I mean, to be fair, this card is one of the older format cards that so many decks need to be able to play, because the card provides you with an answer to the yield battle phase. And, it also sends the monster straight to the banish pile, so you don't have to worry about it popping its ugly head back out of the graveyard. That's why Dimensional Prison is such a crucially important card. I hope that this does change. I hope that we do see some actual good reprint equity in the future set, because Prison is one of the cards that needs a reprint the absolute most right now. Clown Crew upgrades. I saw we got one of the Clown Crew cards in the set, but this kind of begs the question of, you printed Clown Crew intentionally all at low rarity, which you've got the entire Clown Crew player base fiending at the mouth to want to find upgrades. And there's nothing wrong with feeding, an upgrade or two in addition to what you've already done into these sets. Let people upgrade their commons. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have not hated seeing Clown Crew upgrades in the set. There's a lot of cards you chose to reprint in this set that I think a lot of people would have looked at and just been like, yeah, turn that into a Clown Crew ultra rare for the extra deck. Turn the Wolf, which is a bad super poly target, turn it into something else, man. Like, there are better uses of things that we could have had for the extra deck that I think a lot of people would have enjoyed. Like, rant over. Sorry, Clown Crew players. You guys absolutely deserve a little bit better. And then Contrast Hero Chaos and, Shadow Mist. This was the set that you gave us Jaden Yuki power-ups. This is the Saboteur Kuribo set, man. Where in the world are our upgrades for Contrast Hero? Like, what were we doing here? You knew that players had been waiting for Contrast Hero Chaos to get a little bit cheaper. Now you're forcing people to go back and look at that old structure deck yet again to continue to pick these things up. And I am afraid that we are going to continue to see a price upgrade on Contrast Hero Chaos. I wouldn't be surprised to see, a couple months down the line as we get more of this hero stuff kind of going into rotation, if the Contrast Hero Chaos isn't going to be like a $10 card. I think that's already a ridiculous thing to say, but, in hindsight, it's becoming more and more of a reality as we're sitting here with how things are going. So, yeah, we'll have to tell, but God, this was a pretty major miss on Konami's behalf. And then we have the Evil of Infernoid. This is a card that I'm still sitting here pondering the orb, going, why are we dodging Infernoid Evil as a reprint? Is it just because, we still think the card's very new for what it is? Because, we just did get Infernoid support in, the last 2 years. I mean, I guess, but it's also the fact that, Shaddolls kind of need this card, and you didn't reprint it on the first time through, so why are we hesitating now? I don't know. There's just a lot of cards I look at in this set and go, why are we not getting reprints on these? Why are we holding back at this stage? Because it doesn't actually make any sense to me, but, whatever. These are the biggest misses for this block. Patrons, thank you!
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.